For some people, getting loud and clean music seem to be impossible, but there are 5 steps that I have never seen anybody talk about in a single video that will get your music to sound as loud as you want it to while making it cleaner and crispier. My name is Max, welcome to Mix Elite Academy, and how come this track here we get about -10 LFS, we are even peaking 1 dB and I cannot push it harder because it just started distorting. But the same track with different processing applied, I can push to +17. We are getting -5, -6 LFS. We are not picking. And it sounds clean and crispy. Louder equals better, like literally psychologically and physiologically. Docs hate it, we love it, but here it's not just louder, it's crispier, punchier and glued together. The very simple way to achieve this loudness is by playing our song through a limiter that doesn't allow the audio to get above 0 dBFS threshold, which is the limit for your speaker to play music, and turning on the gain so we shave off the peaks of the sound, making the louder parts quieter and the quieter parts sound louder. And this is exactly what I've just done to this track. It is a cardinal sin
EDM right here
that you should never ever do. So what's going on and what should you do to get the crispy masters? First, let's clear up that the peak you see on the meter inside your DAW has nothing to do with how loud your music is actually perceived. We measure this with LUFS instead. It's a separate metering plugin you have to use. If you don't have one, just click the link in the description below. As electronic music producers, we want this number to be as high as possible, ideally to at least -8 to -6 integrated LUFS. Skrillex goes -3, we'll get to how in a moment. Second, why did you just say louder equals better, Max? When Spotify tells me that recommended is -14 LUFS or they will lower it. Because people are confused between distribution target and playback threshold. Spotify uses -14 LUFS as playback settings. Is their target for average integrated LUFS of your entire song. If your drop is hitting -1 LUFS and still sounds great, that's amazing. No streaming platform is gonna be applying limiter on your song. People will just turn up the volume as they want it on their studio Bluetooth speakers, and Spotify might just change the volume. So we always master our tracks as loud as possible without it starting to sound worse. Full stop. Next, before we start, fundamentally, your master will sag and not be crispy, not because of what you do on the master mainly, but what you do while mixing. If you want a clean and loud mix, before we get to mastering, your friends are right-click, delete button. You cannot make 50 MIDI synths loud because they're fighting for the same pixel of headroom. Selfish low end, because low end is carrying the most energy but least loudness. That's why if you listen closely, pro tracks actually don't have as much sub frequencies as you might think. Frequency masking, a lot of side chaining, not only from kick to bass, but to make space for whatever is the priority in your mix. Clipping individually and groups to control the peaks, and everything below 100 Hz is mono. These guys will give you 80% of a clean mix that we now can get to making loud and crisp. So let's start from the loudest part of our rendered mix. This applies to every genre, EDM, trap, hip-hop, etc. First, on your master, since low frequencies are the heaviest, we always apply a low cut to cut everything that's unnecessary. So I'll apply Fruity Parametric EQ2, and unnecessary starts just under the lowest note that your song plays that shouldn't be lower than 30 Hz. For example, D1 or D2 in FL plays at 36 Hz. In FL, there's this preset you can apply, and I will take it a little bit higher because my track is in E, it hits at around 41 Hz, so I'll just start rolling down after it. You should not turn on linear phase or oversampling. Linear phase and oversampling will leave for the final limiter. You can hear it's getting worse with linear phase and oversampling applied. Some people like to also use shelf instead. That would look something like this. You use this shelf if you feel like after the low cut, your track became boomy, right? There are some phasing issues. Then we don't need any lows from the side channels because side channel is everything that's different between left and right ear. Side is what creates stereo width effect, and stereo width in low frequencies is bad, very bad. Wanna know why, right? Because they oscillate in lower frequency, and if two play the exact opposite signal, you'll hear silence. not in your headphones, but when you listen back to it on mono speakers, or there will be blind spots in clubs with no bass audible at all. I will use a free mid-side EQ preset for Patcher that I can download for free below and just start increasing the side low cut. So this is how it looks like from 2 to 300 Hertz. We're starting to roll off everything so that at 120 Hertz, everything down is only mono. There's no side signal. And this is what we are cutting. Take a listen and notice how the phase shifts. So the bass is inaudible every couple of seconds. So it's also really inconsistent and it will screw up our phase a lot. That's why we do it like this. And if you worry that we are losing a little bit of this punch and bass, we'll be adding the good one back in a moment. After we would get into dynamics, take a look at our waveform, how many weird little peaks we have. That's why we would usually apply a clipper just after the EQ if we wanted to really push the loudness. I really like this small plugin, literally very small, called G-Clip. You push it until you just barely hear it change the knock of your drums, then back it off 10%. And now we also turn on the oversample. We do not turn on softness, we keep it at 0%. So I had it started to distort and then I backed it off so I don't hear it no more. Take a look at what waveform looks like with and without it. We're cutting the unnecessary peaks that don't really make it sound different, but will screw up our limiter in a minute. Technically, even better way would be if we applied multiband clipping. So you would not be limited by the whole waveform. And you'll find a whole niche for multiband clipping on YouTube, but ideally instead, you don't do multiband clipping on your master when mastering, but do it on individual groups of instruments when mixing. This is what, for example, Skrillex does to achieve this -3 LUFS. That's why some mastering engineers will want you to send stems of your track for mastering so that they can do stuff like this, but this is basically mixing already. We are not doing that today. Now, why did we use hard clipping before compressors or a limiter? Because our limiters are trying to be smart. Their goal is to be as transparent as possible without adding distortion. If you have a huge snare hit like that upcoming, this smart brain of this thing will soften the hit to fit the snare under the ceiling we set over here. On the other hand, clipper is dumb, and that's why we love it. It just chops off the waveform. That's why the next step, after we got our signal clear from these weird harsh peaks, is multiband compression. You can do this in Maximus or something like FabFilter Pro MB. Inside Maximus, I think it's pretty easy to see. I like to set the pre-gain of each band by like 7 to 10 dB, so we have more room to work with. Our goal here is just to lower the dynamic range of every single band individually instead of at once. And at the same time, very important, make up for that. So if we are going down from +8 dB to around 5, we would add about 3 dB of gain to the lows, like that. Then do the same for mids. And highs. And now we can get to limiting and maximizing. This is the most important part. If you were to watch just 1 minute of this whole video, this is the one. I really like to use this one from Ozone because it has all the features we really need. First, before we even tweak anything, we turn on always true peak and set the output level to start at -0.3 dB ceiling. Why this is important? Because when audio leaves your computer, it goes through digital to audio converter, DAC, from PC to speakers. It basically takes the dots and draws a smooth curved line between them to send to your speakers. If two dots are too high, the curve can get above 0 dB causing distortions. So speakers try to play signal that's technically impossible for them to play. And it's called inter-sample peaking, because the signal is peaking between the samples. When you turn on true peak, it oversamples the audio to create more dots to make sure they won't go above the thresholds you've set after converting to the signal that speakers can read. You will not hear these issues inside your DAW because your DAW works in 32-bit float at least. But this all only applies to lossless file, meaning a WAV file that nobody will be listening to actually. Everybody will be listening to something like MP3 versions of your file. Like maybe DJs on festivals play WAV files, but usually this would be Spotify converting your file to MP3, and these settings don't fix this. Your limiter, even in true peak mode, doesn't care about MP3 or any other codec. That's why inside of Ozone you have this codec so that you can preview how it will sound and what will be the true peak after converting to MP3. This is key, okay? We don't even start turning on the gain before we do that. So we have true peak, minus 0.3 is a good starting point. And now I'll start with the codec off so you can hear the difference, and we'll start turning on the gain up until I hear audible distortion. No LUFS matters for now. So you can see we are under minus 6 LUFS. This is crazy. And we are peaking at minus 0.1, even if you have output level set to minus 0.3 with true peak on, okay? And now let's turn on codec, go to, for example, AAC, because that's what Spotify, for example, uses for their web player, and set it to 256. And we'll be looking at this peak to see if we are clipping. And immediately we're clipping. Even though with no codec applied, we're pretty much at the true peak level. Now, this +1 shouldn't be audible at all, but if we go lower in codec, it's getting much worse. That's why so many people will tell you to go lower in the true peak ceiling. Spotify tells you to go minus 2 dB true peak ceiling just because of this codec. If we go minus 2 dB, we only have half a dB of headroom after converting it to AAC 128 kilobytes. I would personally, before limiting, apply some kind of imager to make the stereo width of our track a bit more rich. I would do something sort of like that, where we have lows fully in mono and mids to highs a bit more stereo. This will also increase a little bit of our headroom. The problem I see here is that our peaks are still a little bit too high, even though we've applied Clipper already. If you've seen something like this, what I would do after our multiband dynamics, I would apply another G-clip just to make sure we are controlling those tiny little peaks that don't really bring anything but unnecessary volume peaks. As you can see, now we are much more in controlled environment. Now, if I just apply a limiter and apply the same amount of gain we've added, this is how it would sound. And this is after everything we've done today. Even though I'm trying to give you my best here on YouTube, there's just so much that I can cover. That's why inside our Mix Elite Academy, you get lifetime access to all of our premium courses, all of our samples, presets, song templates, including this one, and weekly live group coaching, unlimited one-on-one feedback on your music, discounts on thousands of plugins. So if you want a foolproof way to start making professional sounding music, check the first link in the description. And remember that the best way to get a loud master is to make music that people want to turn up. Quality is the best volume booster. That's why in this video you can see here, I'll take you through the start to finish process of mixing your track. So click over and I see you there.